In March 2025, a private company's robot landed on the moon, upright, intact, and on budget. NASA didn't build the lander. NASA didn't own the lander. NASA didn't even fly it. NASA was just a customer, with a delivery receipt for the surface of another world. This is the story of how America's moon program became a shipping company, and why lawyers, not engineers, made it possible. To see how strange that is, start with how the moon was done the first time. Apollo was government from top to bottom. NASA designed the ships. NASA owned the ships. NASA flew the ships. At its peak, the agency was spending more than 4 cents of every federal dollar. The largest peacetime engineering project in history. 400,000 people worked the program at its height. An army mobilized by appropriations, not invoices. Contractors built the hardware, but under contracts where the government reimbursed whatever it cost, plus a guaranteed fee on top. The same logic built the interstate highways and the atom bomb. Decide nationally, pay nationally, own nationally. Nobody asked what the market wanted, because there was no market. The customer, the regulator, and the owner were the same 3 letters. Lawyers call that cost plus contracting. It makes sense when nobody on Earth knows what a moon ship should cost. Somebody had to absorb the unknown. In 1961, only a government could. But cost plus has a famous side effect. When overruns get reimbursed, overruns happen, and everything was disposable. Each mighty Saturn V flew once and fell into the sea. A skyscraper of engineering, used like a match. Even the leftover hardware tells the story. It went to museums, not warehouses. Nothing Apollo built was ever designed to be sold. It worked. It also cost, in today's money, well over $200 billion. And for all that money, Apollo flew to the moon fewer than a dozen times. 9 crews, 6 landings, every mission bespoke. Apollo left 6 flags, hundreds of pounds of moon rock, and a business model nobody could afford twice. When the race ended, the money ended. For 50 years, nobody went back to the surface. Hundreds of people have flown to space since. None of them has stood on the moon. The pivot came decades later, and it came quietly, in the cargo business. The space shuttle was retiring, and America was about to lose its own ride to its own space station. So in the 2000s, NASA tried something that sounded almost lazy. Instead of building a new rocket, it would buy deliveries. Fixed price. Deliver the cargo to the station, you get paid. Don't deliver, don't get paid. The legal instrument was humble, milestone agreements. NASA paid for results, a test passed, a flight flown, never for effort. That detail, buying services, not hardware, moved the program out of the old procurement maze and into something closer to buying airline tickets. Ownership of the vehicles never touches the government's books. Neither do most of the lawsuits. The company kept the rocket, kept the design, kept the risk, and kept every other customer it could find. That flipped every incentive overnight. Finish early and spend less, you profit. Fail, and the loss is yours. One early winner was a scrappy startup most people hadn't heard of. It was called SpaceX. The cargo contracts kept that company alive long enough to change the whole industry. Fixed price wasn't just cheaper. It was venture capital with a mission patch. Skeptics asked, if a rocket fails, who answers to Congress? The answer turned out to be the company's shareholders, not the taxpayer. Congress grumbled, audited, and eventually copied the model for astronauts themselves. Commercial crew followed commercial cargo. Legally, NASA had stopped being an owner and become a buyer of services. And the savings were enormous. There was a psychological shift, too. Government engineers had to learn to watch someone else's rocket carry their cargo and resist redesigning it. So in 2018, the agency asked the obvious next question. If it works for cargo, why not the moon? It wasn't a slogan. It was a procurement decision, with a program office, a budget line, and a stack of contract templates. The answer is a program with a gloriously boring name. Commercial Lunar Payload Services. CLPS. In plain words, a delivery service to the moon, run by private companies. Each mission is a task order. NASA lists the instruments it wants delivered. Companies bid a price for the trip. The orders are small by space standards, tends to a few $100 million, and deliberately spread across many companies. If one lander crashes, NASA loses instruments, not a program. The company answers to its insurers and its investors. NASA doesn't buy the lander. It buys space on the lander, like freight on somebody else's truck. The company owns the vehicle, licenses its own launch, buys its own insurance, and carries the risk. The insurance market adapted fastest. Underwriters who once saw only national programs now price moon landings like ship voyages. Risky, but quotable. And NASA said something no space agency had said out loud before. Some of these missions will fail, and that's acceptable. Officials called it taking shots on goal. More tries, cheaper tries, faster learning. Reality obliged immediately. The first lander, in early 2024, sprang a leak hours after launch and never reached the moon. NASA's instruments died with it. The program shrugged by design. No hearings, no cancellation, next truck. Weeks later, another company reached the surface, sideways. Half a landing that still sent home data. Each failure produced something Apollo never could. A public price tag for risk, printed in a contract. Trucks crash. Delivery services survive crashes. Then in March 2025, Firefly's Blue Ghost touched down softly and stayed upright. The first fully successful private moon landing. It carried a drill, a dust shield, an X-ray imager, a government laboratory, delivered like office supplies. 10 NASA experiments rode along. The delivery contract, about $100 million, pocket change by Apollo math. But the strangest part of this new moon economy is the receipts. In 2020, NASA offered to buy moon dust from private companies, collected on the moon, and sold on the moon. One winning bid was famously $1. 10 cents paid up front. The price was a joke. The paperwork was deadly serious. Because that little transaction proves a legal chain. A company can collect a space resource, own it, and sell it. A 2015 American law promises exactly that. The dollar receipt was that law being tested in the field. Lawyers noticed what didn't happen next. Plenty of grumbling abroad, but no formal legal challenge to the sale itself. In international law, that too is data. One detail matters most. Ownership transfers on the moon itself. NASA never takes delivery on Earth. The dust never moves. That shows a sale can complete off-planet, under ordinary contract law, without anyone claiming the ground beneath it. No deed, no flag, no territorial claim. Just a bill of sale for movable goods, the oldest instrument in commerce. Notice what NASA was really buying with that dollar. Not dust, a courtroom-ready precedent that nobody protested. Other countries noticed. Luxembourg and Japan wrote their own resource laws, and their companies now compete for the same deliveries. 3 other firms signed similar contracts at slightly less symbolic prices. The market was tiny. The signal wasn't. Next on the menu, water ice at the lunar South Pole, the rocket fuel of the coming decade. If that market opens, today's $1 receipts become tomorrow's billion-dollar precedents. So the moon program didn't just change its rockets. It changed its legal roles. The government that once owned every bolt now signs delivery slips, and private landers carry the nation's experiments. None of it required a new treaty. It required purchase orders and the nerve to sign them. It may be the most American solution ever applied to the heavens. When in doubt, write a contract. The rockets got the headlines. The contracts got the moon. And somewhere in a filing cabinet sits humanity's first receipt for extraterrestrial goods, worth $1 and priceless at the same time. Half a century ago, reaching the moon took a superpower. Now it takes a contract. Watch the next lander touch down. And remember, the cargo manifest is also a legal document. If you want that fine print read to you by a lawyer who enjoys it, follow Space Docket.